Welcome everyone to the latest edition of Seconds Out Boxed In, our weekly tier list of a division in boxing. And this week it's the super lightweights, very exciting division packed with talent. I'm joined, of course, as usual, by Joe Leigh.
How's it going?
Brilliant, good stuff. Joe, I'm going to let you go first, as I often do, because I'm just that kind of guy. So who you got and where are they going?
I'm going to start with, after seeing some of the comments, Joe's scared. He doesn't put anyone in the also rounds. It's been 2 weeks, 1 week without it. I'm not, but unfortunately for Victor Postol, I'm not, because for me, he's lost to two of the best guys he lost to Crawford, but he's lost to Josh Taylor as well. He's 36, and everyone I'll have on my list, I see beating him. Not because of age. I mean, if they do fight, obviously age could come into the equation later on with fatigue and whatnot. But yeah, I don't see him winning a belt. He's obviously a former champ as well, but I don't see him winning one again.
Fair enough. Start with an also round. Start on a low, end on a high.
That's what I'm going for today, yeah.
My first
Get
one
out of the
I'm
way.
going to do is Shorjon Ergashev.
Yeah.
Easy for me to say. Uzbek
Smashed it.
amateur star, great amateur pedigree. 28 years old, so not in the first flushes of youth, but unbeaten, fresh into his pro career. Was obviously turned over quite late.
Yeah.
Hasn't really fought any names as yet, but everyone who's seen him in the gym and in action so far says he's got great ability and he's a future star. He trains under Sugar Hill Stewart, who of course is getting belated recognition now after his work with Tyson Fury, but also previously took Adonis Stevenson to a world title and a long reign as well. Ergashev recently was talked about as a possible opponent for Regis Prograis. Doesn't look likely to happen next now, but that would have been an exciting fight. Would have told us a lot more about him. As we've been saying for weeks, there's no age rules on where we put people, and he hasn't beaten anyone to put him in the contenders list yet. So I'm going to have to put him in Young Guns, even though he's 28.
Yeah, fair enough. And on this week's episode of Young Guns that aren't actually Young Guns, I'll add to that. And I'm going to put Arnold Barboza Jr. because he's just fought for the North American Boxing Federation belt for the second time he's won it, but he hasn't got a resume, so I can't put him in the contenders if he hasn't beat anyone, because a contender is someone who's, beat people and he's ready to face the best. Barboza Jr. hasn't done that yet for me. So he's 28, of course, as I say, and he's not ready to be a contender, but he's certainly a young gun, I guess, in terms of his boxing career.
Highly touted as well. You hear a lot of people talking about him on social media and people at various outlets saying that he's one to watch for the future.
Certainly. I think the thing that stands out for me most is his recent victories have been in more impressive fashion. So he's getting there, but he's just not there yet.
All right, so I'm going to put someone in the contenders category before it, gets lonely. Or can it get lonely if it's empty? You get the point. And that is Regis Prograis, obviously former world champion, WBSS finalist, and only lost to Josh Taylor in that World Boxing Super Series final by a very narrow margin in Scotland. At the O2. So relative home advantage for Taylor, we could say. But Prograis, very talented fighter. Good mover, fast hands, intelligent boxer. I just think got a little bit out-muscled down the stretch against Taylor in what was a very high-paced fight. And Taylor, obviously both men faded in the second half, but I think Taylor just imposed his physicality and his will on Prograis a little bit more. But an incredibly tight fight. I think he'd have beaten Maurice Hooker if that fight had gone ahead at the catch weight. It didn't. Prograis has said that he wants to stay at 140 pounds in that division. I find it very hard to see anyone else in the division apart from Josh Taylor who beats him. So he's straight into the contender category and the very top of it.
Do you think he beats Ramirez?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Do you? Yeah. I'm going to go on to him next. Jose Carlos Ramirez, WBC and WBO champion, of course. So that's the category he's going in, the top category. Just beat Hooker, and he's lined up to fight Postol next. Of course, as I mentioned, I don't think Postol poses much of a threat. I think he walks straight through him, and he's actually called out Taylor. He said, "After I beat Postol, I want all the belts and I want to fight Taylor." Who do you think wins that, Danny? It's a great fight.
I still Taylor.
I still back Taylor, but Ramirez is certainly, he's got some great fights down the pipeline if he continues to stay at this weight class. And of course, yeah, he's in the world champion category.
Yeah, good shout. Next one for me is Jack Catterall. It's good to have another Brit in there. I say another. We haven't got to Josh Taylor yet, but as a unified world champion, he's obviously going to be in it.
Spoil it.
Yeah, I know. Spoiler alert. Bit of a difficult one with Catterall because he's 27, so he's younger than two of the guys we've already put in the young guns category. So he is eligible. Clearly, not there's any rules. You could be 35 apparently the way we're going, but he's a very talented fighter, but he hasn't taken that major step up yet. He's the mandatory contender for the WBO belt. It seems like he has been for ages, and he's patiently waiting for his shot. And in the meantime, he's beaten kind of British/European class fighters. The upcoming final of the MCK Golden Contract features two people he's beaten fairly comfortably in. Well, O'Hara Davis was a bit closer, but in O'Hara Davis and Tyrone McKenna. So he's kind of, is he a contender? Is he a young gun? I think I'm just going to put him in the contenders category simply because he's unbeaten. He has beaten some decent people, and he is mandatory contender, literally mandatory challenger for that WBO belt. But he could easily have gone in the young guns, so it's one that's easily open to dispute.
Yeah, that's a fair argument, and being mandatory, it's not a bad shout. Just putting him straight in the contenders because he's probably going to get a shot very soon. Another cloudy one for me, Robert Easter Jr. And I'm still back and forth. He's going in the contender. I should have said that after actually, but you know. I don't think he's a giant killer. I think he should have made mincemeat of Granados because that's a first fight in the division, by the way. You've got to stake your claim, and for me, he didn't do that. Although he won, I just think
very few people have an easy night with Granados, though. Danny Garcia aside, he's kind of upset the apple cart a few times. Adrian Broner had a tough time with him.
I agree, but with how the division's looking right now as well, I don't think. That's why I put him in the contenders because I think he could get a belt, but I don't think he's going to be, like I say, a giant killer beating the Taylors, even Ramirez. I think he'd struggle against, and so I think he possibly could get a belt in the future, but I don't think he's going to be a long reigning champion.
Another one who kind of fits into that category, although arguably with more upside because he's still quite early into his career, is Alex Salcedo. Who we saw in action, I think, earlier this week, beating Sonny Fredrickson on points. You would have liked, it was a good performance from Salcedo, but although you would have liked to have seen him maybe step up the pace or put his foot on the gas and get his opponent out of there. Good fighter, talented, aggressive, entertaining. Can't forget that war with Lenny Zapovina, of course. But had that world title shot against Maurice Hooker in his hometown, in Oklahoma, everything behind him, the top-ranked machine. And he couldn't get the job done. He dropped him early, but eventually got stopped. And that led him to changing trainers and leaving Abel Sanchez behind. And he seems a lot happier now in his work. He's staying at the weight, and we'll see where he can get on. So I'll put him in contenders for now, but I think he's still got a fair bit to prove.
Yeah, certainly. Mario Barrios, my next pick. WBA champion. But he's sort of stuck in the mud at the moment because
that's
his
the
last
fight belt, right?
Yeah. Last fight against Akhmedov was very, very controversial. Even though he got knockdowns, some people, Akhmedov certainly thought he won, and I believe that the rematch has been ordered. So he's sort of stuck in the mud in an awkward position. He wants to fight Mikey Garcia. He's got the mindset to become a real world champion, but at the moment, obviously, he's going to go in the contenders, and he needs to right that wrong against Akhmedov first before he progresses.
Okay, so my penultimate person that I'm ranking is Jose Pedraza, who is fighting tonight as we film this. By the time this comes out, it won't be. It'll be Saturday or Sunday by then. He's fighting tonight against Mikel Lespierre in a fight that was supposed to be a few weeks ago, but was delayed because Lespierre's manager, I think it was diagnosed with COVID-19, and it had to be put back on that ESPN show. But they're fighting tonight. But the reason I can pick him anyway, I did think about shelving him and picking someone else, but I think he's going to go in the same category regardless of what happens. Because I see him beating Lespierre fairly comfortably tonight. Yeah, I'm still putting him in the also-rans category. He's like 31, 32 now. He's had his defeats. He gave Lomachenko a few problems down at lightweight, but ultimately got stopped. He also, he got outpointed, but he ultimately got stopped by Gervonta Davis. And then he had a relative upset defeat to Jose Zepeda as well. And putting that all together, he seems like someone who's always going to be just bubbling below the very top level. And I don't think he's a super lightweight. That's the other thing. If we were ranking him in the lightweight division, where he's shown better form, he'd probably be a contender.
Yeah.
But up at super lightweight, where the guys are bigger, more established, and largely younger, I think we have to put him in the also-ran category. I can't see him beating any of the big names at 140. And that is apparently where he intends to campaign.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would have whacked him in the contender just because of sort of like a Robert Easter Jr., where when his chance comes, he'll snatch it, but he won't be a long-reigning champion. And one fight could be on his side. With the COVID thing, I think the testing's so weird because Michaela Mayer tested positive, didn't she? And then she was negative like the next day or something. So that's all strange. But yeah, at least he's fighting tonight. And my next pick, is Baranchik. Even Baranchik. Most Brits know him for losing to Josh Taylor it was an interesting fight, got knocked down, got back up, has some decent combinations in him, and that's his only loss of his career. He has to be in the contenders for me. He's obviously a former champ, but there's no way anyone could write him off now, and I certainly see him coming back and writing a game plan. Ramirez, I think, is a fight I'd like to see, because if he switches the game plan, I think Ramirez is a fight where the combinations that get to him. Ramirez is quite quick, but I just think Baranchik, that'd be a great fight. I love that.
I think he's still quite young as well, Baranchik. I'd have to check, but I think
27, I believe. He's not the youngest, but he's fairly young. He'd go in the young guns probably. In fact, no, the younger people go in contenders, the way we're going. But yeah, he's fairly young.
I interviewed him before before his fight with Taylor in fight week, and it was just like the worst interview ever. He didn't have much to say.
Yeah. It's never
but yeah, not his fault. So, no, my final man is obviously, no spoilers here because he's the world champion who hasn't been mentioned yet. So he has to go straight into the world champion category. And at the top of it, in my view, Josh Taylor, the pride of Preston Pans near Edinburgh in Scotland. Just a superb talent. Took from the start of his already an Olympian and a great amateur, but took from the start of his pro career to unified world titles, wins over Baranchik and Prograis by Shane McGuigan, of course. Now working with Ben Davison, although they haven't had a fight together yet because one of his mandatory defences against Apin and Kongsong was postponed from May the 2nd due to COVID. We expect that to get rescheduled at some point before the end of the year. But just a very versatile fighter with real quality. He's got fast hands. He throws every shot in the book, but he can also impose his will physically, can fight on the back foot, can press forward aggressively. There's not a lot he can't do, not that I've seen so far. And I just think he'll dominate this division, move up to welter, and then that'll be the real test to see how he gets on there.
Nah, I agree, mate. It's a great way to end it. He's the king of the division right now. I think there's still a couple of fights left for him and Ben Davison at this division, but certainly moving up to welterweight eventually, yeah.
Good stuff. Well, that's all of them. Now, you guys have got to let us know what we've got right and what we've got wrong. Who have we put in the wrong categories? And who haven't we included in our total 12 that you would have liked to have seen discussed? Let us know below who you think's the best in the super lightweight division at the moment and who you think's the future of the weight class. It'd be great to hear from you, and we'll respond to some of those comments.
Certainly, it's really enjoyed this one as always, and we'll see you next week.
Brilliant. Take care.